It's drilled to left field. Is it high enough? See ya! A walk-off grand slam, and the Yankees win.
And he drives one to right field over toward the line. Long run for Laureano, and he runs it, and the Mets win the ball game.
Live episode 37 of the Boroughs on YouTube and Instagram. Supposed to be on Twitter, but not working. I'm Kevin Bunk, joined by Michael Merlo every week, and it kind of feels for me, Mike, you see the new intro, we have one as well for audio. It feels to me as if it's the start of season 2 of the Boroughs. Last few episodes we've done have kind of been just a staggering end of February, January free agency stuff. Now, I really feel that we're starting to get into the thick of the season. We already have our first season-ending injury on the Boroughs. We haven't had one yet for a prominent player. Now we do. Year 2 starting very different than year 1 did. But it feels like season 2. I'm pumped to be here and happy to be here with you, my friend.
The intro is great. I love that intro. I get the music. I was dancing in the waiting room there. I was feeling good. Love the calls. It's a great intro. And I'm pumped. Yeah, the injuries stink, especially the Cole one, which we'll obviously get to. But yeah, it's good to feel like we're finally here. And I was already at this place probably 2 weeks ago, but I am so sick of spring training at this point. Like, enough is enough.
You're sick of it?
Yeah, like...
You're sick of it. I'm sick of it.
I was there 2 weeks ago, though.
Yeah. It's tiresome, spring training. And there's just like, this is the least interested I've been in a Yankee spring training in a long time, but it hasn't halted my excitement for the actual season. I'm just not totally into spring training at all right now.
Well, I mean, there are some battles that we're going to get to today that you should be very excited to watch spring training for, right? I mean, who's going to play third base, who's going to be the DH, and that's funny that you say that you're not even close to being locked in there.
No, I'm just not, and maybe it's because of, remember when I told you in November, if the Yankees lost Soto and didn't get Kyle Tucker or somebody of that caliber, then I really wouldn't have gotten excited about their offseason. I think it's because of that. I think I just need to see them hit the field after this whole offseason of Soto talk and are the Yankees better? And now you have the Cole thing. I really need to just see them hit the field, but that obviously is a little bit worse now that Cole's out. I mean, we haven't done an episode since then. You've seen, if you follow BTO, the amount of NFL free agency stuff we've done this week. We really wanted to lock in and focus on that for a couple of days. Happy to be back here talking Cole. So sorry to our listeners that we haven't actually gotten to the Cole news in a more timely manner, something that won't happen going forward. But yeah, I'm kind of like expectations tampered now completely since Cole's out. And I don't really know how they move forward because we said all offseason, well, the strength of this team is their starting pitching. They have the best rotation in the American League, maybe the best in the entire league, right there with the Dodgers. Now Cole's out, Heal's out for probably half the season, and that doesn't have a good outlook on the Yankees' year.
No, it's one of those injuries that if we could do this in all of New York sports, you know, which guys can't you lose, right? Like, who are the guys that could possibly derail a season? Judge is one, and Cole is probably up there. Now, the one thing I'll say is when you sign a guy like Max Fried, who, yes, has dealt with injuries of his own the past few seasons, he has. You sign a guy like him, he's not a high-end ace, but he's an ace, right? You trust him getting the ball game 1 of a postseason series if that's the case. So I don't love the depth right now. We'll talk about potential options for them because we know realistically there's no big trade coming here. You're not getting a trade if you even get one until July. They need depth, but having Fried at the top here to be almost an insurance policy, it's not the worst thing in the world.
And it's totally different. You're right. If we're sitting here today and the top 3 in the rotation is Carlos Rodon, Clark Schmidt, and Marcus Stroman, that makes you just throw up stepping into opening day. So right now, it's almost as if you had last year's team, but you lost Soto, added the hitters. I don't have to walk you through that. But with the rotation, it's kind of feels like Luis Heel just got hurt from last year's rotation because Cole missed half the year anyways, and he wasn't himself until late in the season. So they can still stay afloat until Heel comes back. And they can still have a good rotation. But now you're really looking for Stroman and Rodon and Schmidt to step up, and probably Will Warren's going to have to step up for the Yankees and really give them some big starts the first 2-3 months of the season. And then you'll go from there. But I'm just worried about their ability to keep games close early on in this season. If the hitters aren't acclimated, I mean, if Judge has one of his typical first months, the Yankees could be sitting a few games under 500 the first week.
Yeah, Will Warren has impressed this spring. I understand that, but he's coming in now as the fifth starter. You would feel good if he was, a long relief option or the sixth man. For him to come into this season now as that fifth guy, I mean, you need to see it at the major league level. He did not do that last year. It was ERA in the 8s, I think we had said last week. So I like Stroman too. Again, he's a good insurance policy if somebody goes down, but you move a guy up now to the 4 spot that probably shouldn't be there. It's not what you want on the back end. Rodon, we've always had concerns about Carlos Rodon. And again, now we're expecting a ton. I'll say this about Heel. You get Heel back in July fully healthy, and now it's a short season for him. We saw what he was able to do early last season. That could be huge for this team.
Yeah, last year, Will Warren was actually worse than I remembered. He was 0-3. It was mostly bullpen appearances, but a couple starts. Let me see where's games started here. He started 5 games, appeared in 6, so he only actually came out of the bullpen once, and he had a 10.3 ERA, and his whip was nearly 2. Oh. So we just, while I expect Will Warren to be a top 5 pitcher in a rotation throughout his Major League Baseball career, you look at what he did last season, and you can't sit here and say, I'm really comfortable with him coming in.
If they made the improvements they believe that they did this offseason, again, he has looked good. He's got good stuff.
Yep, and you see the side-by-side mechanics change videos. Clearly, they altered some stuff.
Right. It's just tough to have confidence coming into a season where you thought, like you said, this is going to be a strength. This is going to be the reason why they win the American League. And now it's no longer that strength.
And maybe you're sitting here in September. Obviously, Cole's never coming back. He's dead. He's dead until next year.
Wow. Okay.
And he's not coming back. So maybe we're sitting here in September saying Will Warren is an American League Rookie of the Year finalist, the same way Luis Heel was last year. Now, granted, Heel's about 15 years older than Warren, but still, the same way Heel was. Nobody expected Luis Heel to be as good as he was last year. Right. So maybe the Yankees get him going and get Warren to a point where in September you're saying, you know what? I don't feel bad in the American League about Max Fried, Will Warren, Luis Heel, Clark Schmidt, Carlos Rodon. I don't feel bad about it. That's possible because I look around the American League and still, Mike, you look at most sports books, they have the Yankees as the number 1 over-under total. Still, after the change, it's still sitting around 91.5, and that's not a praise on the Yankees as they're able to withstand these blows. It's just the reality of the American League, and there's some sports books where you could find 4 teams in the National League with higher over-under totals than any team in the American League has. So the Yankees are sitting there right now, and I want to have this conversation later on. Who are the contenders in the American League? Who really will rise to the occasion? Because we also will have our prediction show next week or the week after. But Rangers, Red Sox, Orioles, Astros, those are the 4 teams that they really have to compete with. They could be better than any of them. It just stinks not having Cole, though.
I think the two main competitors are going to come from your division. I think that's the issue I have with the win total right now being at 91.5. I think there's too many question marks around this team to still have them as the top team in the American League. I don't like the American League. We know that. We none of us do. But I think the 2 teams that could give you a run for your money come from your own division. Plus, you have the Blue Jays who made some moves. I don't think the Blue Jays are going to be contenders, but they're not going to be the worst team in baseball. And Tampa Bay is never the worst team in baseball. So you have the toughest division in your league. I just don't see how I would bet on the Yankees to go over that 91.5. And on the other side, I don't know who I would bet to have the best record in the league. I don't know where I would put my money down.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough year, I think, to watch the American League. I think that's just what it comes down to is even if these teams are fun and show some flair, they're going to just beat each other up in the AL East. The three
What
teams,
does fun mean? What is fun?
Like Boston could be fun. Boston could be a team with Bregman and Devers that wins 88 games, but you really enjoyed watching them, especially the days where Crochet was on the mound. Really fun to watch in big games late in the season. Yankees, I don't think will be fun. I'm not just saying that because I think their expectations on a yearly basis are just way too high for an 87-win team to be enjoyed around the league and celebrated. Baltimore, you might have still the fun aspect of Gunnar and Adley and those young guys if they can get going. I don't know if we're past that point yet in excitement. We'll see when the season goes on and gets going. But Texas could also be a squad. I mean, if Jacob deGrom is Jacob deGrom and he's pitching well, then that team's going to be fun to watch if they win their division.
Right. They're going to have we know they're going to hit. They have Eovaldi behind DeGrom. Yeah, that they could be very interesting. I'll tell you what, the team right now in the American League for me with the Cole injury is Boston. And I think Crochet could have an impact like Schoolball had if he's healthy. Like, I think he's that good. He looks that dominant. I'll ask you this question. Should Boston lock him up before the season starts so that they don't go through another, the agent steps in and we go through another innings restriction here late in the year, or they're limiting him early to save him for late, because these games are going to matter early for them in a tough division. I just wonder if they should lock him up, but I think he's that good. And I think Boston could really be that good and win the American League East at this point.
He has 2 years of control, right?
Yeah, I think it's 2 years now.
You might want to try and lock him up there. The two reasons I would try to lock him up, one mainly is because of what you just said. With his camp, he get a little funky, it seems. So you might just want to secure that now. But also, he might be a Cy Young guy this year, playing on a contender in Boston. So yeah, exactly. You get it done now. You think you can get a good price on it. You get it done at the end of the season. That guy hits the open market next year as a Cy Young finalist, at least, who was healthy for 2 seasons, lefty pitcher. What's he going to be, 27 when he hits?
I'm looking at it right now. It's loading.
Yeah, so however old he is, he's going to be under 30 for sure.
He's 25 right now, be 26 in June.
So he'll be 27 when he becomes an unrestricted free agent. That guy's going to get paid on the open market if he does what we think he'll do in Boston while staying healthy.
And if you were to pay him right now, what does the contract look like?
Right now, what would the contract look like? Let me see if Spotrac has anything for him. But
because he'll be a UFA in 2027.
What would his contract look like? Right now, his market value, yeah, I'd agree. It's around like $22 million a year if he hit like 6 for 130. But that goes up with 2 good seasons. I'd probably put him around what Fried got.
Yeah,
but
if you presented that to him right now, you break the record by $2 million.
Mm-hmm.
They probably accept that too.
Yeah, they would take that. But is he good enough to do that yet? Has he been healthy enough to do that yet? I don't think that he has the body of work to justify offering that if John Henry spends the way we all think he does, and he's shown he will, with a tight budget.
Yes, but if he has a really good season, he's top 3 in Cy Young, he's right behind Schoolball for the Cy Young. That now gets to a point where maybe it's not even worth it to extend him. Let's just go to the market and see what the rest of the teams think of you.
Yeah. Let me see.
Because that asking price is going to be insane.
He's already had Tommy John when he was with Chicago. So he's had the shoulder issues. I don't know if his shoulder issues last or the year before were him or them just being mean to the White Sox. But I think he actually had issues. But yeah, he's got the injury concerns for me to not want to pay him yet.
But Boston's going to be good, man. Boston's going to be
good.
I wonder where they're going to play. I mean, is Bregman just going to slot in at second base here now? That's really quieted down. Devers hasn't even gotten into a game yet in spring training. So that's also kind of like the funny part of this.
I know. And when you look at their prospects coming up, Campbell is a second baseman, third baseman, whatever, plays second, short, third. and you have Anthony as well. You have a good group of young players here. I just wonder how Campbell fits in getting up with the team, because Devers has to DH for him to get up with the team.
I think eventually, because he's not going to make it out of camp, so maybe you just start the season by appeasing him, but have the conversation as like, listen, like we're trying to win a championship, and this kid gives us the best chance to win. And this situation, this, roster makeup has you at DH, and that's how we have to do it because we want to win a championship. And if he's not okay with that, then you have problems that you have to deal with in the offseason. And I'm talking about trading possibly.
And maybe you could play the outfield. Are you going to move Rafael or Refsnyder? Obviously not Duran, but you can move one of those guys for Campbell. Obviously,
now
Anthony.
You're worse defensively now.
Mm-hmm. So they have questions to ask, and Marcelo Mayer is also a shortstop that's supposed to be coming up this year. And can you make the room for him? I'll tell you, the worst contract they have on that team is Trevor Story. Like by far, just when you look, and there's stretches as a Red Sox where Story has been pretty good. There's been weeks, not months, weeks, where you've said, all right, Story is starting to look like his old self, but that's a contract that they just want to get rid of if they could, but they can't.
He'll never be his old self, but can he stay healthy and just be productive offensively and play a good short? I think that's really all they're asking for at this point.
Because now you have guys that you want to call up and get up, but Story almost has to take a lineup spot.
At least for this season, you need to, But at the same time, he goes down and you bring Mayer up, let's just say, and he hits and Story's ready to come back. It's like, you know what, Trevor, we're good.
Yeah, exactly. And he's probably a guy. How many years does he have left on that deal? He's got to have 4 years left with them.
No, it's a little shorter. It was a 6-year deal, right?
Oh, 6? I was thinking it was 7. It might be 7. It might have an option. Let's see. But Story's the guy that they want to get rid of in that group. He's the guy. Every team's got the one guy you wish you didn't have. Story's a UFA in 2029. So he has 4 years left, but there's an opt-out in 26. I'm guessing it's his. Player opt-out after this season. He's not going to opt out.
No, I would not.
Oh, but 2028's voided.
Okay.
So it's only till 2027. So he has 3 full seasons left, including this year. Which is a lot when you have those prospects. It's a lot of years of Trevor Story.
A lot of years you don't want of Trevor Story.
Exactly. They're gonna have to buy him out in a year or two before that ends, I think.
For the Yankees, are they the bit? You're a Yankees fan. Are they the biggest competitor? Are they the biggest competitor to you? Are they the team that you look at not
for the
only in
World
the
Series or the division or the playoffs?
In the league? Are they the team that scares you the most?
They're the team that worries me the most, only because I know their upside and we play them more than Texas. But I think Texas is better. I think Kansas City could be better also.
Okay.
Bobby Witt scare yesterday.
He's good though.
That was a scare for Royals fans. I think Kansas City's very underrated in this American League. And I think Detroit's becoming underrated in the AL.
I was about to say I think Detroit's becoming a little underrated, but I'm not picking any of those teams to unseat Boston, New York, or Texas. Like I don't think any of those teams beat them out.
I could see Kansas City being able to do it by October if things go right for them. I don't think they will right now, but they'd be the team outside of the obvious Rangers, Red Sox, Orioles. It would be Kansas City for me, who I'd say I'm a little worried about them in a 7-game series if the Yankees aren't up to par health-wise. Obviously, Cole's not going to be there. But if the Yankees don't have everyone else going, I'd be worried about playing Kansas City.
Well, the thing about those two teams in the Central is that they have the starting pitching. I mean, now you add Flaherty back to Detroit to go along with Skubal. They have Job, who looks good. And Casey Mize is having one of the greatest springs of all time. I mean, and it's obviously sarcasm, but they have guys right now in that rotation pitching very well. And we know that that was the strength for Kansas City. That was almost a scare for the Yankees in the divisional round last season. So, division series last season. So, Yeah, I mean, those teams can pitch, but it's going to be offensively. Can they score? And I just don't think they'll be able to score with the best of them in the American League.
I also, on the topic of Boston, when I look at their starting rotation, I don't love it. So I don't get too worried that they're going to absolutely shove this year at Fenway because it's the most hitter-friendly ballpark in the entire world.
Right.
But I think you look at the guys, I mean, it's Crochet, and obviously they added Buehler, but Buehler was terrible last year when he was healthy. When he was on the field, he was bad. I think he had a 4.5 ERA last year, and then
I think it was higher.
You have Tanner Houck in the top 5 there. Lucas Giolito. Are we really relying on Lucas Giolito in 2025 to be a great starter for you? And Quinn Priester is going to be a starter for them probably.
Who?
He threw 38 innings last year. Quinn Priester. Maybe Cutter Crawford is in that. But that's what they're dealing with in their rotation. And I don't think Crochet, a lot of Red Sox fans are talking about Crochet as if they added Skubal. He might have that impact. But as of now, I've yet to see Gerrit Crochet be that guy.
No, he's not. Where's Bello? Is Bello hurt?
Yeah, he's hurt. Let me see what his.
Because it's not deep. I mean, you're relying on Crochet to stay healthy. You're relying on Buehler to bounce back, which I actually think Buehler is going to bounce back. I think Crochet stays healthy. Buehler bounces back. I do think this is going to be a solid rotation. Not the best in the American League, but offensively, they'll have enough to carry themselves.
Yeah, Priester is probably going to be in that group because Bayo's out for the beginning of the season with right shoulder inflammation. Cora said yesterday, it's Thursday, so 2 days ago, that he's not going to be ready to start the season. So shoulder inflammation, who knows when he comes back there. But we'll see. I mean, the AL is going to be interesting. There's always going to be a surprise team, too, as Detroit was last year. Someone's going to shock. And like the A's, call me nuts, the A's could end up surprising me and get to that 6th spot.
See, that's a little crazy. I think they're going to surprise people and have a good season, but I don't think that's 6th spot.
If I told you this time last year the Tigers would do it and win a playoff series, you would have called me nuts. That would have been a worse take than the A's this year, I think.
I don't know. I don't remember how we viewed the Tigers last season.
Tigers last year was like 58 games.
I like the A's. I do. I think they are going to be a lot better than people think. But they're still holes. I was listening to Steve Phillips yesterday talk about them, and I forget who asked him the question, and like, what do you think of this team and their improvements? And, it's still not enough.
No, it's not.
To get to the point where you feel good, but who the hell knows?
All right, let's move on here quick, get through the injuries. Jeff McNeill, injured.
Yeah.
More thoughts here. This is a bit of a loss for the Mets.
I've been having arguments with my friends all morning about McNeill, Acuna, Beatty. I was excited to see what McNeill could bring this season. I thought he was motivated, kind of forgotten about. He had a huge second half in 24, and he was hitting lasers all over the field in spring training. Looked really, really good. And I was excited to see what he was going to do early on to prove people wrong, kind of say, hey, you know what? This is still my job. Acuna, Beatty, you're not coming for it. This is my job right now. And for him to go down, it's a loss. I think it's a big loss for the Mets. And there are now some questions that I need to ask you because, and I was kind of shocked reading it this morning and looking at things this morning, that Acuna is not the guy that's slotting into second base right now. It's Brett Beatty. Beatty is going to be the guy. He has, he's basically the favorite to be the starting second baseman in 2 weeks from today. And I think that's crazy.
Yeah, Acuna's the guy I would play. I would have tried to find a way to get him in. I might have tried to get him into center field before the offseason played out. When I knew I was getting Soto, and then before the rest of the offseason played out, I may have been trying to force him into the lineup in any way possible because I think Acuna can be a really, really good spark in the bottom half of the order that championship teams need. This is Beatty's shot, though, now. He's going to get the first week or two at least. I mean, what's McNeill going to miss a month here probably?
Yeah.
Starting today, not a month of the season. So we will go forward with Beatty getting 2-3 weeks of run at least at second base, and he's hitting in this lineup, which is much improved. He's got his shot right now to, even if it's not the Mets, to show major league teams he's valuable and he can be a piece. This is his chance, though, because he's had a couple. This is the one that he has to capitalize on.
Right. He has 2 weeks. Acuna, I would have had Acuna up because Acuna could play short. He could play second. He could play probably third at this point, and we know he played center in the minor leagues. I would have had him on the team over Beatty. That's just me, though. The Mets see it differently, and maybe it's just to give him the shot and say, let's get this over with. Here's a spot for Beatty. Let's just get him in this lineup and see what he can do early. Because you're right, it really is only 2 weeks without McNeill. But could that be the case? Like, we just want it. Maybe Acuna deserves it based on what he did last season. Better defensively. I mean, Beatty hasn't played a full season yet at second base. He might have only played a handful of games last year in the minor leagues at second base.
Mm-hmm.
So could this just be, let's get this over with. Let's see what he has.
That's what I think it is. And also, I wonder, I'm not sure, is there a service time element with Acuna that Stearns is trying to work around? If Acuna plays 3 weeks of April, do they lose the extra year of service time? I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know about that right now.
What his stance is there, but that's possibly in play. But I do think it's Beatty getting his last shot here with the Mets and having an opportunity to get some run. But McNeill did look good in spring training. You're right. I thought he could have been one of those guys that took Mets fans by surprise in the bottom of this order. Probably would have been bottom 3. Definitely would have been bottom 3 in the order, probably hitting in that 8 spot. But yeah, tough loss. He'll be back, though. Good news on Manaea with, I think, the same exact injury there, right? Right oblique strain.
Yeah, thank God with Manaea, the MRI came back clean. He started throwing this week, and he basically restarting spring training at this point. So, few weeks probably into the season, as long as everything goes well, it's best case scenario when you hear that, a guy that's slotted in to be your first or second starter gets hurt. This is best case here.
Yeah, and then Alvarez is
not
hurt
best
also.
case.
I don't think we haven't done a show since Alvarez got hurt either, right?
We have not.
Where are you on that? Obviously, Alvarez not really presidents of his fan club, but we did acknowledge that they need this guy to win.
Well, it's funny. I mean, their record is crazy with him in there as opposed to him not in there. I like Torrens a lot. I mean, more than most. I think the guy can hit. He's got a cannon of an arm. I feel comfortable with him behind the plate, especially defensively, more so than Alvarez. I'll be completely honest with you, especially throwing runners out. So I like Torrens. We'll see how, the backup catcher syndrome, right? You always like the backup catcher, the backup quarterback a little bit more than the starter. I think a lot of people feel that same way about Torrens, but, he's going to have a month or two here where he's the guy. I don't think they'll add anybody from outside the organization to be the backup. They're just going to bring one of these guys from AAA up, and that'll be it. But I like Torrens. He's going to play a lot, and he's going to really get some run here.
I think he's everything you want in a backup catcher, too. He's great defensively. He's got a great arm. He's not going to hit to the point where you think he's actually a starting caliber player. Last year, he hit 220 with a 280 on base, OPS 637. So is he going to give you much at the plate? No, but that's a pretty high-end backup catcher based on what we saw last year. He's just got to stay healthy, hold down the fort for 2 months, and you hope in those 2 months that I'm not trying to compare Alvarez to Judge, but Soto can do what he did for the Yankees the first 6 weeks of last year, where he was so great at the plate that he won them a lot of games. And based on what I'm seeing in spring training, Mike, we might be going in the same direction.
Can you wrap them in bubble wrap? I mean, he's ready. Yeah. Vientos is ready. Lindor's actually not ready, but that's a discussion for another day. But these guys are, Alonso is ready. Like, enough. You don't have to play him anymore. Soto looks just unbelievable. Vientos has hit a few homers now this past week. Offensively, MLB Network rated the Mets the second best lineup in baseball, and the guy that wrote the article seriously considered putting them at 1 over the Dodgers. I don't know how you feel about that, but this is going to be a lineup that scores runs. And early on, I think the pitching, especially with the injuries, they might take a hit. It might not be the greatest staff in the world, But offensively, there's going to be a lot of times early and throughout the rest of the season that this offense just carries this team, like we saw the Dodgers do a lot of times last season when their pitchers went down.
I think I'm not even going to address the Dodgers thing, but I mean, that's just insane. But,
What's insane?
Dude,
What's insane?
Look at that lineup.
I didn't write the article. I didn't consider putting the Mets.
I know, but I wouldn't even consider them one. It wouldn't be a thought that crossed my mind.
I think it would have crossed my mind.
No, it would not have crossed my mind.
It would have crossed my mind.
I don't even know if they're two. So how could I put them one? I know the Dodgers are one.
Who would be two? Atlanta?
They might not be two or one or two in their division.
That I think they have the best lineup in the division.
I think we've seen time and time again, and I don't think it's going to happen this year. But to discount what the Phillies can do at the plate could be dangerous. Just to sit here and say that lineup is not going to rake, just confidently say, I know for sure this lineup's not going to rake. I think that could be a bad.
But I'm not saying they're not going to rake. I'm just saying let's go through the lineup. You have Turner, who was terrible in the second half in the postseason. Castellanos is probably done. They were doing everything they could to get rid of him. Bohm was terrible in the second half last season. They did everything they could to get rid of him. Schwarber's a 40 home run guy. Okay. I still like Schwarber. Harper is Harper, MVP candidate. No issues there. Real Muto could still hit, but he's getting up there in age. Like, the point is here, they're an aging team that had a lot of bad tendencies last season, and they needed to work on a lot of things offensively to become a better team. Now, they might be able to get off to a really good start this season and kind of do what they did last year and build up a big division lead. But if the Mets and Braves are healthy, they're going to catch them at some point. They just are.
How about with Atlanta? Because the Braves are the best lineup in the league, if the best lineup in the division for me, if Acuna was healthy. But he's got the ACL. He's not playing in spring training. Sounds like he might do some DHing to start the season.
And that, by the way, that I'll agree with. That I will agree with.
Where is Spencer Strider at?
That's the biggest question. Because when you look at the teams, and I tried doing this in my head yesterday, how do I rank these teams? And the question I always have is, well, when do Acuna and Strider come back? And then when they come back, how long does it take them to get right, to get comfortable? So if they come back in May, are they back to their close to normal selves in June? Because now you have 4 months there where you have a full team. It's tough to predict how this team is going to look because you don't know when these guys are coming back and how they're going to look when they come back.
Because Strider right now feels like he's going to be pitching maybe in May. He says he wants to get some spring training starts before the season begins. And if he's bargaining and campaigning for spring training starts, tells me he's not ready in the eyes of the organization.
Right.
And even if he just gets 2-3 spring training starts, he's probably not going to start the season. Just go full go pitching. As you said with Manaea, your spring training is starting over again now, coming back from injury. Strider's really hasn't even begun yet. He's just been doing some throwing and some mild BP session or mild live at bat sessions. I don't think he's doing anything.
Probably at March 13th at the very beginning of spring training, if anything.
Yeah, exactly. So he's doing stuff right now that guys were probably doing on their own in January, and now he's starting to ramp up a little bit. Once again, Strider and Acuna could come back the same way that we speak about other guys with injuries. Even Sean Manaea, I know it's a way lower grade injury than those guys had, but these players come back from injuries, especially the pitchers, and they just don't look the same for that first year back. It took Gerrit Cole a while last year to get back to form. Remember that game against the Mets? He just got lit up at Citi Field.
Yep.
It took him a really long time to get himself back in the groove. That could happen with Strider, and Atlanta's not in a position to miss those two guys for majority of the season before the All-Star break.
And they didn't do much in the offseason to supplement or prepare themselves for these guys to miss a certain amount of time, a significant amount of time, plus get acclimated and get right. You know, they added Profar. Okay, I like Profar. He's a good player. Probably a good add for them. But in the rotation, you know, they lost Morton. They lost Fried. You know, they lost two big guys in that rotation this offseason. You know, that I like Schwellenbach a lot. Chris Sale, you have major injury concerns after not being able to pitch in the postseason and just having that full season of being dominant. I mean, how could you trust he's going to stay healthy for a full 162? You can't. A lot of concerns there with Atlanta, but again, that offense is so great and they have the potential to be so great. They kind of scare the crap out of you.
And Chris Sale coming off a Cy Young year, do you ever get the feeling with a veteran player who's had some inconsistencies, not only with health, but on the field, such as Sale, where he just had this great year, you just don't really think it's going to be very good the year after? Do you ever get that feeling with players?
I get that feeling with him. I've had that feeling with other guys. I don't necessarily believe it'll be a bad season, but it certainly won't replicate or even be close to what he did last year.
Because right now, their five is Chris Sale, Ronaldo Lopez, who I like, Schwellenbach, who I like, but still Grant Holmes and Ian Anderson. Am I a little worried about their outlook in the division with the Phillies and Mets? And then, honestly, Mike, we'll talk about them next week a lot. Not a lot, but for 2-3 minutes. The Nationals are not going to be an easy series.
No.
For anybody.
They're going to be pesky. They're very young. They're very talented. They're annoying. And if they were in the American League, they would be a team that I would say, hey, maybe they sneak in. Maybe they could be that sixth spot. Honest to God.
They definitely are in that grouping. And I think if you put them in either Central Division, I could see them making a run for the division. That's how competitive I think Washington will be this year. But should those other teams take care of them? Sure. And Washington may end up winning only 75 games because they can't beat those three teams in the division. That's a possibility for them. However, point is Atlanta, along with the Phillies and Mets, but Atlanta with these injuries, they don't have a division to fall back on where they can just cruise through half the season and feel good about where they are because they're beating up on crappy teams. That is far from the truth in the NL East, where there's one series a month with Miami that you feel like you should be able to take 2-3 games, maybe sweep if you have your pitchers going. You feel like you could do that home or away. Otherwise, it's a gauntlet with those four teams.
If you had to rank the three teams right like today, and this could change, and I say it could change because you'll probably rank it differently in June. But today, how would you rank the three teams right now?
I'm going to say all three within 5 games of each other, 6 games of each other.
Very, very tight.
Braves, Mets, Phillies, and I'm assuming the Braves by mid-June are feeling good about Strider and Acuna, but I only pick Atlanta first over the Mets. I don't consider the Phillies for the top spot, but I only pick Atlanta first because they've been winning for so many years now with this group. I think sometimes in the Mets situation, that first year of massive expectations is a little harmful overall because they have holes that we like to glance over, like half their starting rotation. But they have holes we like to glance over because of how excited we are for the team because they're going to be really good. Mm-hmm. I think next year's the year that the Mets have to be the best team in the National League, have to be the best team in the NL East. But with that being said, Mike, if they won 103 games in the division, is anyone here shocked? Absolutely not.
I'll still probably be a little shocked, but I'll say this. I don't think Atlanta is the first or second best team right now because of the injuries.
Yeah.
You ask me in June, they could be. But right now, they're third. I'd say the Mets are first by a little bit, and the Phillies are second. I think the Phillies, for me, I'm worried about the age. I'm worried about the age of a lot of these guys, right? Especially offensively and in the top of that rotation. I think Ranger Suarez is going to have a really good season, contract year. Christopher Sanchez could be a guy that really breaks out this season. Jesus Luzardo has been very solid in Miami. I think in a rotation like this, where he's the fourth or fifth guy, I mean, he could have a fantastic year. And then obviously Andrew Painter, their top pitching prospect, at some point we're going to see him. But the health of the guys at the top, plus a lot of these aging veterans, they're 2 for me. And I think Atlanta would be 3 because, again, of the injuries and the way that rotation looks to start the season. I'm not a fan.
I look through the Phillies lineup. This is my issue with Philadelphia is I don't expect Trey Turner to get better. I don't expect Kyle Schwarber to get better, Castellanos to get better, Real Muto to get better, or Marsh to get better. I don't expect Aaron Nola to get better either. So I don't see them staying on that same trajectory they've been the last few years because I don't like the way this team's aging. Once again, if Trey Turner, Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber, Brandon Marsh, and Aaron Nola all have all-star level years, I'm not too shocked because I could easily be wrong in my projection, but I think out of the 3 teams, they are the one, especially their playoff exit last year, felt in the moment like a catastrophic turning point for their core because it did feel like they at least became second fiddle in their own division, and the gap between the Phillies and the Dodgers felt so much wider. Now there's a gap between them and the Mets, where the Mets are on the right side of it. I still think the Braves could jump them. That moment just felt like one that we look back at as the moment the Bryce Harper Phillies kind of died as championship contenders. And once again, I could be wrong, but I'm just trying to think about how I might be looking at that moment 10 years from now. I think that was a disastrous loss for Philadelphia.
Well, the Mets exposed them. Not only is it a hated rival, but the Mets exposed all of their issues, which was they swing at it, they swing at pitches out of the strike zone. And look at what the Mets pitching staff did to Philadelphia. And then not even a week later, look what the Dodgers offense did to that same exact Mets pitching staff. The Mets had no chance in that series. So, and in Philadelphia was supposed to be considered a top offense with the Dodgers at that time. They were completely exposed by their rival, a team that was not expected to be there. And Philadelphia had this great year where they finally won the division. And yeah, that could be the end of this team being, remember before last season, like going into last season, what was the expectation of the Phillies? Like, oh, they're great postseason performers. They got to the World Series. They got to the championship series. We expect them to get back there at least again. Is that over? That could be over now.
It does feel like it is. That's how I'm looking at it is there's moments in time. I'm not, and I'm going to sound like Nostradamus. There's moments in time where we don't realize what we're looking at big picture until a few years later. I think that was one of those moments. I think the Mets took it to them, exposed them, and the Phillies have put themselves in a position where, with the exception of a couple prospects, including Painter, as you mentioned, they are not changing this team in the Bryce Harper era. Like, this is the squad. You have Trey Turner long-term. You have Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola locked up. This is the core. This is the group. The same faces remain the same faces year in, year out. And I don't think Philadelphia gets back. I really don't. I think they're in the postseason for sure.
Yeah, they're in the postseason.
Shocked they weren't in the playoffs. However, an interesting point that I think we'll talk about throughout the season, look around all sports. Usually when you have 3 teams that you really like in a division, one of them doesn't get in. Last year, all 3 got in here.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough for all 3 teams to have everything go well enough. Not everything go right, but everything go well enough for them to get in the postseason 2 years in a row. One of these teams, I do think, has a chance at missing. And I haven't picked who I think it would be yet. There's reasons for all 3.
Yeah.
I think the Mets are the safe one, though. First year of Soto, I'd be shocked if they missed. I'd be shocked. And I think Stearns and the organization, I trust them to take the right measurements to make sure that this doesn't get screwed up during the season, barring 2 or 3 catastrophic injuries. Yeah. But one of these teams could miss, and maybe Philadelphia is that squad after an offseason of not having much done with their team. There's not any new juice with the Phillies going into this season, as there is with the Mets. And I don't know. Last year just left a bad taste in my mouth.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
When do we consider the Trey Turner? Like, what does Turner have to do this year? Okay. for this not to be considered one of the worst contracts in baseball. $300 million. There's 9 or 8 years left on the deal. What does he have to do? What does the stat line need to look like for us to say, okay, not yet. It's not the worst contract in baseball yet. He's not good defensively. He's going to lose that speed at some point. Offensively, he was terrible in the second half in the postseason in 24. When do we get to that point? I need to know.
Yeah, he's 11 for $300 million. His contract is done in 2033. So he still has 8 years left on this thing.
Mm-hmm.
9 full seasons, including this year. This is a terrible contract, Mike. This is really bad.
It's going to end up being a terrible.
He's 31 years old. And with Philadelphia, first of all, he's a terrible postseason performer.
Mm-hmm.
And with Philly, he's got an OPS of 779, and he just cracked 800 last year.
He is not a good defender. Again, the speed will go at some point. You know, it was a reckless contract at the time for a team that had just went to the World Series and lost. It was Harper's friend, right, from Philadelphia. It's a bad contract. It's a reckless one. I don't know exactly who they could have signed other than him, but I mean, they could have been in on Soto if they don't have this contract now.
Could have been. And next year, you look, are they going to be out on Vlad and Tucker and the Japanese first baseman? Are they going to be out on all those guys because of this contract? There's a few contracts every 2-3 off seasons where contenders tie their future to a co-star, right? Like Harper with Turner. We had Judge. It was Stanton with Judge.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's Soto with Lindor, where contending teams just basically put everything, because realistically, you can't have more than 2 $300 million hitters in your lineup. So you'll see these teams that are willing to spend marry their best player that they have for the next decade to another guy. And they tried to do this with Turner and Harper, and it has not felt the way that it should have. I loved Trey Turner as a free agent. I loved him at the time of signing.
Yep.
But for a guy who relies a lot on his speed and his game, you're right. An 11-year deal that has started out underwhelming, not bad, but underwhelming, does not have a good projection on the second half of that.
It's reckless. And again, Harper went to management and said, I'll go back to right field. Let's sign Alonso. And they couldn't do that.
Yep.
That's how tied up they are with a lot of these contracts. The Castellanos contract isn't good. So they obviously already paid Zach Wheeler. And obviously, so you pay Zach Wheeler, right? He's the best. I think he's a top 3 pitcher in baseball, no doubt. Mm-hmm. You pay Zach Wheeler. They're tied up. And like you said before, this is the squad right here. This is the squad you go with.
And this has kind of become like a Dave Dombrowski
specialty
here. Yeah, exactly right. It's just, I mean, you listen to Boston fans speak on Dave Dombrowski,
mm-hmm.
a guy who was general manager for a World Series. They hate him.
It's the way that he left the team. He left the team in shambles.
Does it not feel like in 4 or 5 years he leaves the Phillies in shambles?
Yeah, they don't develop prospects. They trade the guys they have. They sign bad contracts to win right now. Castellanos, bad contract. Turner, bad contract. I mean, it's the same recipe. It's the same recipes.
And you know, I have a little bias towards him, but at the time, was Logan O'Hoppe for Jake Marsh ever a valuable move? They got to the World Series, but was it ever a valuable move? You don't have to keep O'Hoppe. I would have traded O'Hoppe too, because you had Real Muto.
For Brandon Marsh, yeah.
You had Real Muto. But for Brandon Marsh,
yeah,
he was your top prospect. O'Hoppe was your top prospect. And now he's a top 15 catcher in baseball with the Angels, with a lot of hype going into this season in that organization and that fan base. You could have gotten more with packages that you've sent out than Brandon Marsh. And I'm not just going to go right to the O'Hoppe thing and harp on that, but just the way he operates in general. It's my guy. The way he operates in general, is not responsible.
It's not conducive to success in Major League Baseball. It doesn't go together.
It's like Les Snead if he couldn't draft and he just did all like Les Snead we spoke about on Sunday Recap and when we do football stuff. Les Snead's one of the best general managers in the National Football League, but he took all those measures to make sure they had the best opportunity at a ring every year for 2 or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And Dombrowski did the same thing, but in baseball, it's very different. You don't have the immediate success of draft picks that you have in football. And I've never brought this up on the show, and I've wanted to a couple times. You ever see when Andy Martino, and I don't necessarily agree with this, but did you ever see when Andy Martino said, setting your goal as a World Series is too unrealistic? You have to set a more moderate goal, and if the World Series comes with it, that's nice. Only one team can win it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with that, but there are truths in that. If you try to win the World Series every year, 4 or 5 years later, if you don't have an owner that spends the way the Dodgers do or the Mets or the Yankees do, if you don't have a 300 million plus team every year, it's very difficult to remain in contention. Very, very difficult. So sometimes you have to set a little more rational long-term goals, and Dombrowski does not do that. Dombrowski's goal every year is World Series, which I respect, but it is destroying the Phillies.
The Mets, the Yankees, their goals, the Dodgers are to be competitive and be in the postseason every single year, right? Like it's not win the World Series. Listen to how they say it. It's sustained success. You're 100% right. Martino got killed for it. That is the goal of the players. That is the goal of the people on the field. And that's what you should say. And even if Stearns says it, like our ultimate goal is to win the World Series, but we want to have sustained success, it's essentially saying the same thing. It's saying what we're saying. So he got killed for it. I'm sure I've killed him for it, but when you look at it, it's 100% true. It is because it's so random. It's just so random. And you look at Dombrowski compared to the way these other teams run their baseball teams, it's completely different, and it's reckless, and it's not how you win. You might stumble into one. They almost stumbled into one, but they didn't stumble into one at the right time. And I don't think they're going to stumble into one now.
And sometimes you have to say, as a general manager, I think, all right, we are one of the best teams. We are one of the teams that can win the World Series this year. Because if the Phillies did, we've seen way more outlandish appearances and champions than the Phillies this year. If they were to make the run, they have a good enough pitching staff to do it. They have a good enough lineup to do it. And if they stayed healthy and they were the team that stayed healthy and reached the mountaintop throughout the season, it wouldn't feel abnormal. Like when the Washington Nationals did it.
Yeah.
But with your team building strategy, sometimes I think you just have to say, and I think Brian Cashman does this and fans hate it. Yankee fans hate it. But I think sometimes you have to say, not making this move now doesn't take us out of contention. Like if there's a move that you could make to thrust your 1-year World Series window into like hyperdrive, and you feel great about it if you make that one move. You get the move that I'm talking about, like that kind of, it's a little reckless, but we can, if we make the 1 year, go all in on this year, we have a much better shot. There's certain moves that you have to say, we can make this move and we'll be more so contenders. We might even be the best team in the league, but without making it, we're still the 3rd or 4th best team in the league, and we could win the World Series. But if I do make this move 4 years down the line, I'm definitely going to regret it if we didn't get a ring. Sometimes you have to pass on those moves. Sorry it took me so long to explain that simple topic, but sometimes you have to just say, we have to avoid this move and not make it right now. Like Max Scherzer, trading for Max Scherzer and giving up Acuna. If the Rangers didn't win the World Series that year, it feels incredibly dumb and irresponsible right now for them to have made that move. But they won the World Series, and that's okay since they did. But if you don't, and most teams that make that move don't win it, you sometimes have to avoid that move. And Dombrowski never avoids that move.
He never avoids the move. And you talk about like drafting with Snead, I'll go back to that. Like you have a draft here or there, like a year or two. He's been there long enough where you could have a draft or two and then develop some players. And it's like, oh, your farm system's top in the league. You know, like it could flip like that, like at a snap of a finger. And it hasn't with them at all. It hasn't with him in Philadelphia at all since he's been there.
And it did it with him in Boston. He didn't do it in Boston. Remember how depleted their prospect pool was when Chaim Bloom got that job?
It's the reason why he got the job.
Exactly. It was so bad in their minor league system that they had to sell out, basically, and hire this guy in order to build up their prospect pool again. And now Red Sox fans could hate him forever. You have one of the best systems in the league. Some analysts say you do have the best system in the league. And that's a pretty good feeling. Having the best farm system in the league and an owner who is willing to spend at least middle of the pack. I know Henry's disappointing in that. I'll rip him forever for it, the way he's flipped his spending. But having a guy that's willing to spend that much while you have the farm system, it's a good place to be in Major League Baseball. And that has a lot to do with Chaim Bloom and has nothing to do with Dave Dombrowski.
Yep, 100%.
All right, couple little Mets-Yankees topics before we've really taken a nice trip around the league here today.
Yeah.
But a couple quick Mets-Yankees topics to go through. We'll go through them quick. And then I'm watching Big East basketball the rest of the day. But you have some good things for both teams. I just want to run through quick the Yankees. Like, it's not all doom and gloom. You have Bellinger hitting positively in spring training. I know we've spoken about it. How much stock do we put into hitters in spring training? Not much. But I do like to see that Paul Goldschmidt is hitting in spring training. And you also have Dom Smith, who, we posed the question, who will be the Yankees DH? I don't think it's going to be him, but it probably should be based on the personnel they have. I can't even believe I'm saying that. I'd rather Dom Smith play over Trent Grisham. And I don't know if you concur with that.
Where's Ben Rice in this? Where does Ben Rice
play? I do not want him. I don't think he's better than Dom Smith right now.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, with the way Dom has looked, yeah, I would give him the first couple of weeks here. Obviously, Grisham's going to be on this team. He's going to play a lot, but when he's in the lineup, like, he should be in the outfield. Like, there's no reason for Grisham to be on this team and be DHing, Like, just put him in center, get him in center. That's it.
And those two guys, Rice and Smith, are not like, we're not putting the future of the franchise in their hands as we would be with Jason Dominguez, or if you pulled up Spencer Jones. They're not that caliber of player. Obviously, Smith's not, but Rice isn't that caliber of prospect. So if they do just platoon at DH and ride the hot hand until Stanton comes back, whoever gets hot, that's fine. That's a fine way of doing it.
Yeah, but now you have two guys. Now you have two guys that don't play any position but first DHing. Like, you can't have that. Like, you can't have that. Now you're taking up bench spots.
Speaking of benches, Yankees bench is terrible. That's bench not as terrible. Yankees bench is awful, Mike.
So what is it? What would it be? Grisham,
Oswald Peraza, Dom Smith / Ben Rice, Everson Pereira is probably going to make it.
They send him down. They sent one of them down
2 days ago, I think. Pereira got sent down 2-3 days ago. Let me double check. But either way, those are the names that will make up their bench throughout the season.
Right.
And when Stanton comes back, all you're doing is adding Rice and Smith, which is 2 first basemen. Rice will probably just go back down if he's not performing.
Right. Early.
Yeah. Yeah, Pereira got optioned. And the same sequence as Spencer Jones getting sent back down. But
and
Yankees
Cabrera was scratched from the lineup today. They
according to a couple writers, I haven't seen it from any of the big ones, but Boone said that he was sick.
Okay.
Which would make sense with a scratch, because you just don't scratch a guy in spring training. You come out.
You would have known. You would have known prior.
Yeah. And then the Mets bench too is better.
Marte, Torrens, Acuna now, and who would the last spot be? Taylor, right? Sorry, Taylor.
How much run does Taylor get in center this year with Siri?
A lot. I think it's going to be. I think it's basically going to be a platoon.
Like, I see Mets fans saying, like, Siri's going to give us 25 home runs. He's going to be like Kyle Schwarber for us. I don't think that's even close to being possible, and I don't think he
Kyle
plays
Schwarber. Kyle Schwarber with a 600 OPS and 20 home runs. Sure, okay. If that's Kyle Schwarber.
I'll tell you what, the average will be the same.
Yeah.
Nothing else.
Listen, you're only asking for great defense out there. That's it. And if he's able to hit 15, 18, 20 homers, okay, great. But you're expecting defense, and that's about it. And he is an elite defender, and you need that in center field.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Marte, good bench bat. Seems like a great team guy, too. I feel like he's really stepping into his role.
He'll platoon. I think he'll platoon at DH with Winker. I think that'll be a nice little platoon there.
Doesn't it seem like he's really stepping into his role as like veteran leader? Doesn't really have much left in the tank on the field.
I think he's happy. No, I think he's happy to be there.
I think so
and
too.
He knows his role now, which is he can't stay healthy, and he's probably going to be just doing a lot of DHing. Yeah, I just think he's happy that he was not traded to Kansas City or something like that, and he's on this team.
Because a lot of times, guys who have had great careers, they'll get to this point and say, well, I could go play in Chicago or in probably only Chicago. But no, but he can go play Colorado. He can go play with the White Sox. He can go play for a lot of teams. A couple of teams in each Central would take him as a player. Salary could make a different conversation, but I'm not spending time talking about Marte's hypothetical places to play. And then you look at the Mets pitching rotation. Last thing we'll touch on here. And the back end guys, we all worried about him going into the season. The top
feeling
three,
good right now.
You got to feel good right now, man. And we spoke about how much stock do we put into hitters, but you really put stock into pitchers in spring training. Not that when they're great, that they're going to be Cy Young, but when they suck, you're concerned. And these guys have not been bad. They've been good.
No, it's Holmes. We know how great Holmes has been. I'm not even going to bring him up right now. McGill always looks good in March and April. But the one thing McGill never does, even when he looks good in March and April, is throw strikes. He's throwing strikes right now. He doesn't look too bad. I'm not going to get my hopes up again, but could he be the fifth guy? He can be the fifth guy. Canning was missing bats the other night. I mean, really missing bats. Had really good stuff. Again,
you just need McGill also to be that guy that comes in and fills the strike zone. Come in, fill the strike zone for me. Give me a few innings. Don't get absolutely lit up, but a couple runs, fine.
He's got good stuff. Those 98. I mean, he's got good stuff.
Yeah. And he was your guy to watch last year. How badly did we do on those? Do you remember that? Our X Factor, underrated players. And yours was McGill and mine was Verdugo.
Yeah.
How badly? Verdugo is not even on a team right now.
How did McGill start the year okay last season, and then he took, I forget exactly.
They almost had the same exact trajectory.
They both started out really well,
solid, and you feel good about them. And by the All-Star break, you're like, well, this slump is taking a little too long. Then by the end of the season, you want them gone off the earth.
Yep, I remember that. Yeah, McGill is my guy.
Did you see Verdugo doing that drill 2 weeks ago?
I didn't. I know he's been posting a lot though.
Yeah, he posted himself doing a drill on this balancing thing, and he's hitting just regular BP hitting on it, but it moves like crazy. And
I did see this. Yes, I did see this.
It's like he's hitting in the middle of the ocean on a life preserver, like he's standing on a raft, and it's just moving while he hits.
It's impressive.
Maybe those drills are why he had the season he had last year.
Or maybe that's the reason why he's going to get signed.
He might never play Major League Baseball again.
Which is kind of crazy. Like he could start. He could start.
He should be a bench bat somewhere at least.
I mean, he can start on those teams you just mentioned that Marte can start for. I mean, he can play on some teams.
Oh, man. All right. Well, that's episode 37 for you. And we're, it feels like spring training never ends, dude. It feels like we get on here and we're no closer to the season starting.
2 weeks from right at this moment. 2 weeks. So
yeah. So thank God. Next week, it'll start to feel real, and we'll probably double up on episodes the following week where we'll have our predictions and then opening day stuff in a separate second episode. So yeah, we'll see you next week. Again, we thank you for watching. You could always listen afterwards if you missed it on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Also, hopefully soon we'll be live on Twitter, but you definitely want to follow the Twitter account because it'll get really active once the season starts at the Boroughs BTO on X. So thanks for watching. We will see you next week. Same place, probably same time as well.